Hello and good afternoon to everyone. If you can hear me well and see me, please type yes in the chat box, just to make sure that everyone can hear me well. Hey, Muhammad, it's good to see you. All right, thank you, Nathan. Perfect, thank you so much. Great, so everyone is putting in a yes. That's good. Let's start. Well, thank you so much for your time, everyone who's here, and welcome to Skillful Second Edition training. I'm thrilled to be with you today. My name is Alaa Salem, and I'm Macmillan Education's education consultant in the Gulf and Alexandria, Egypt. Currently, I'm based in Alexandria, Egypt, and I am very happy to have you today. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you. Same here. Okay, so today we'll be exploring why our students are scared of writing most of the time. Of course, under the umbrella of Skillful Second Edition and how it can help us in overcoming such fear, and how we as teachers and the students can benefit from Skillful Second Edition. I'll be talking generally about Skillful, but the focus eventually will turn and shift to writing. We'll see this throughout the presentation. Please make sure if you can't see or can't hear me at any moment to type that in the chat box, and make sure that when there is an interactive activity, you're typing in the chat box as well. And let's start. Okay, so what is it exactly that we're looking at today? We're trying to understand who exactly we're teaching, the types of students, and the context we're trying to teach in. What challenges do they face in English for academic purposes? And we're focusing on writing here due to time constraints, of course. And how can Skillful Second Edition help in overcoming those challenges? Right, so in an attempt to break the ice a little bit, I want you to change my mind about something. And this is an attempt to try to understand the context that we're working in. Hello, Ahmed. Thank you. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you a statement, and all you have to do is just type short phrases to try and change my mind about this statement. So the statement goes as, football matches are boring. Change my mind. What would you tell me to convince me that they're not? You have 30 seconds. Are you all convinced they are boring? Try to change my mind. Salam, hello. Same here, glad to see you too. All the men in the room, do you guys think football matches are boring? Sure. So what I'm saying is that I see that football matches are boring. What do you think? I want you to change my mind about that. Do you think football matches are boring? Okay. Great competition. What else? Why should I watch football matches? Okay. So much fun and excitement. Absolutely. The matches encourage team spirit. Okay. Most people agree that they are fun and exciting. But do you think fun and exciting would convince me? That's a good question. Watching live or on TV? No, I'm talking about TV. I'm being humble here. Okay, excellent. So you're cheering your own team. Excellent. Okay, so the question is, thank you so much. I mean, I was pretty sure that most people in the room would have been completely against my stance. And of course, it takes part of socializing. Thank you, Abdurazik. Thank you. The thing is, do you think I asked the question or I posed the stance with my mindset to change in the first place? Like most females are not interested in football, and when they think they're boring and they're asking someone to convince them, it's usually not that they are looking for someone to convince them, right? They are reluctant to change their opinion. And same goes to the young adults we're dealing with. When they're coming into our English classes, they think that there are things that are very difficult to do. Academic writing is difficult. Speaking in front of a large audience is difficult. Sometimes they think that the English class altogether is not that important. And they come in the classroom with the spirit of change my mind. I'm reluctant to change this. I don't believe that whatever you're saying is true. But the question is, are they reluctant to change their opinion because they really believe in it? Or are there some other reasons why they refused to be convinced? Why do you think our young adults are reluctant most of the time to change their mind about what they believe about academic English? Can you give me some ideas? Why are young adults reluctant to change their mind most of the time? This age group in particular. Any ideas? Okay, someone's typing. Mm-hmm. Environment makes it quite hard in some cases. They don't see the point. Excellent. Sometimes it's easier for them to ignore than to put effort and fail. Lack of regular motivation. That's perfect. Okay, I see a lot of things about motivation. Okay. Right. Motivation. What about fear? Everything that we don't know enough about makes us a little bit scared, right? We don't want to attempt things that we don't know much about. We have limited knowledge about the whole topic. We need support and motivation, as you said. We're shy. Super. We lack, yeah, we lack a lot of technicalities like vocabulary and ideas. Perfect. So there we go. Now we're trying to understand bit by bit the age group that we're teaching and why they come into our classes with this spirit of do your best, change your mind, I'm not doing any better. How can we take them out of this mood? How can we make them understand better what they're asked to do? So Skillful Second Edition helps the teacher actually do a lot of that because of the support that you've been just talking about and the motivation. So we think that if students have the enough tools to walk them through all the things that we want them to do, this will make them do the tasks seamlessly. Today I'm going to talk to you about three major features in Skillful Second Edition that will help students be a lot more motivated and understand more what exactly they're asked to do and understand more about their learning journey. So the first thing is improving their academic performance. And let's not forget that if they're doing Skillful, they're actually studying academic English, which is not very common. They haven't been doing that for all their school years. So it's technically something new that they're usually afraid of. So we're looking at improving their academic performance, building their language skills and fluency, which includes a lot of what you've mentioned, like vocabulary, ideas, and all that, and how comprehensive the digital support is in the book. Upon a closer look on improving academic performance, we'll be discussing three main points. The first one is the key study skills. The second one is critical thinking skills, which is a hot button now in the teaching industry, and vocabulary for academic success. So what are the key study skills that they will encounter in Skillful second edition, and why is that important? Well, the study skills section is actually found in every unit in Skillful second edition. So in every unit, there will be a page and some activities that are dedicated to study skills. Study skills can comprise like proofreading, like the example on the screen, and other things like time management, like research, and a lot of other things that students need in academic English. This whole thing is based on the work of the pioneer researcher Stella Cottrell, who has spent a lot of her time researching that and writing about it. And students encountering this in the book will enable them to know a lot about how to study in university context and beyond that even. Also, there will be a lot of critical thinking sections throughout, and these are based on the themes of the units the students are doing, and this will be supported by the opening page of the unit, which usually has infographics that introduces the theme and then poses some questions or gives some activities that enhance critical thinking. So students will be able to look at some information, analyze them, debate them, sometimes give opinions about those, and even discuss those within groups or with their peers. One more thing that is very interesting that you'll find in the book once you start teaching it is the authentic, level-appropriate Reuters news videos. Throughout the book, there are lots of videos that are authentic from Reuters news agency, and these things or these videos offer the students real-world topics to talk about. And eventually, when they're talking about real-world topics, they will be able to give opinions about things that are happening around them and will be able to use the language and synthesize it and produce it better. The last thing that I'll talk about when it comes to academic skills is vocabulary for academic success. Well, we all know that vocabulary is really important, and sometimes people give it more importance than should be, but really vocabulary is important to give the students the tools and the means to express themselves. So in the book, the syllabus features an academic word list with the most frequently used words in the academic context. In every unit, you will find, like what you see on the screen here, academic words that are introduced to students, and graded activities that will take them through the whole process of learning them and being able to use them in different contexts in the productive skills later on, writing or speaking. The words of the academic list are labeled by a star system to show both the teachers and the students the most recently used words in order for them to be able to focus on the very frequent words. Also, is very important because if students are doing any proficiency tests in different contexts or are doing anything that is related to academic English, they'll be able to use the same vocabulary from the book, and it will help them a lot. Right, the second main feature of Skillful second edition is building language skills, and I think this is what probably every teacher is looking for. This is done through, again, three things. The first thing is the dual skills approach, and I'm sure you've already known about that, having already adopted the book. The book comes in two books that comprises receptive and productive skills. So there's a book for listening and speaking, and the other is for reading and writing. So those books work complementarily with each other, and the teacher can teach both together because they use the same themes across the units. The second thing is the strong pronunciation focus. And since we're talking about Skillful second edition in particular, I'd like to highlight that the focus on pronunciation actually has been doubled. And I'll talk about this in a moment. The last thing is the clear speaking and writing models. And I think we'll talk a lot about this later on in the presentation. So as I said before, Skillful second edition uses a dual skills approach, the two books that I've mentioned. And in the reading and writing students book, the core grammar and vocabulary concepts are introduced, and they're expanded on later in the listening and speaking. So the teacher can work with both books at the same time, and everything that is introduced in one book is enhanced in the other. So both the skills and the language and the skills, the fluency skills, are enhanced through the units. As for the pronunciation, I think it's very interesting to mention that pronunciation comes in the book with two different focuses. There is pronunciation for listening and pronunciation for speaking. And this is very important because sometimes students find difficulty in understanding listening because of some phonetic features, and sometimes they're able to listen well, but they aren't able to produce as well when they're speaking. So by dedicating two different pages or two different sets of activities to target pronunciation for listening and speaking, this enhances students' pronunciation so much. And as I mentioned before, this is something that is highly focused on in the second edition. The last thing is the clear speaking and writing models. I won't delve deep here because we'll talk about writing models later on, but the idea is to offer students models to follow, things that they watch first, try to imitate, feel confident after imitating, and then being able to produce something similar later on, working within a frame, something to follow to be able to produce something that is almost as correct as the model. The last thing, which I think is very important to the teachers before the students, is actually the comprehensive digital support. So for students, they're really supported digitally because our courses are fully flexible, especially after the corona and when COVID hit. So students will be able to have fully interactive student book tasks, and they have additional workbook practice, which will enable them to work either from home or from class, and it gives total flexibility to their practice. They do have unlimited access to the course audio and video. As for the teachers, there is easy class preparation and delivery, automated gradebook, which will reflect directly what the students worked on in the gradebook, and there are ready-made test materials, which of course are the most important to any teacher. Right, so now we have a general idea of, that's a continuation of the digital support for teachers, but again, I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation to that, so you don't really have to worry about that. After we've taken a look at the general idea of how Skillful generally supports students in terms of academic skills and language and fluency, we'll be taking a deeper look at one of the skills, which is the title of the presentation, and that is writing. So why do you think most of our students are usually anxious about the writing? Can you type in some reasons from your experience why your students are not comfortable doing writing most of the time? Okay, some people are typing already. I love the spirit. Excellent, absolutely. I mean, who doesn't? Problem of lacking confidence. Okay, worried about mistakes. Lack of courage. Definitely. Different mistakes, spelling mistakes, grammar mistakes. Excellent, thank you so much. Lack of exposure. They don't know what they're expected to do. Mechanics issues. Right. Thank you. Right. So I don't think that the apple has fallen very far from the tree. These are the reasons we thought about. The first one is actually the fear of being judged on the quality of their academic language, especially when it comes to grammar and vocabulary, because this is a focus in our region, we have to admit. They've never written academically before, so they're asked to write an academic piece and they don't know what that is. So how can they do that? They lack support. They have never written academically in English before because sometimes they can write in their mother tongue. Their unfamiliarity with the genre conventions. And by genre conventions, we mean the type of the text they are writing, what exactly is being asked of them. The permanence of written language, unchangeable, once written, that's it. Looking foolish among peers, we really don't want to forget that we're teaching a very critical age and they have this fear of being judged. And the last thing is issues around plagiarism. I think this is not very common, but maybe at a higher level of language, but sometimes this could be an obstacle. Right. The second thing is actually their lack of knowledge about the differences between writing types and actually learning types or the course types they are studying. So sometimes the students are not very clear on what's the difference between academic and general English, judging their young age. And the fact that there are lots of differences, as we can see on the screen, between general English and studying English for taking high-stakes exams like TOEFL or Ielts, or studying academic English for the sake of studying academic English. So there are a lot of differences, like the types of texts or the purpose they're writing for, or the end or the tone they should be using in writing, like expressing their opinion or writing based on evidence. Who's the reader? Is it only their teacher? Is there an examiner involved? Is there an academic community? What's the focus of the grammar they should be using? What's the text level? Are they asked to write sentences only, or paragraphs, or whole texts, or maybe academic papers? So the lack of exposure, as you mentioned, is something that sometimes inhibits students as well as teachers. And the good news is, if you're teaching using Skillful second edition, all the 3 columns, all the types, and all the purposes are practically tackled throughout the 5 levels. So this is one good piece of news. Right, so the second question would be, of course, how can we help them overcome all the fears that we've just talked about and even more fears that we haven't tackled? As teachers, what are the things that you can think of to support your students and encourage them to write more comfortably and more confidently? Can you share with me some ideas? Okay. I'm sure you've gone through this before. I'm sure you've done awesome things. So we'd be glad to know a little bit about that. Okay, a writing routine. Thank you, Muhammad, because when you're worried about something, when you repeat it a lot, definitely enhances your confidence. Perfect. Any other ideas? Okay, expose them to a variety of writing, beginning from the known to the unknown. Perfect. Exposure again, so it seems like exposure is a keyword here. Encouragement, thank you. Writing from their own experience, which relates a lot to the idea of talking about the real world and being exposed to themes that exist in their everyday life. Absolutely. Enough time to practice, a lot of reassurance. Self-reflection, continuous practice. Awesome. These are awesome suggestions. Thank you. Right. So again, if we're talking about the fears that we talked about, a lot of the things that you've mentioned are practically the things on the screen. We need to offer them ongoing language development. We need to make sure that there is systematic development of writing, ideally in an academic context. And as you mentioned, starting from lowest levels. Access to good models, exposure, as we said, which illustrate genre conventions or different types of writing, development of planning, drafting, and editing skills to ensure best possible output, and help with summarizing, paraphrasing, reporting verbs, and writing referencing lists. So I think you got this already completely fine. Now, what Skillful does is practically looking at all these things under 5 major areas of support for the students. The first one is language development. The second one is systematic writing support, genre conventions, planning, drafting, and editing. And the last thing is academic conventions. We'll be slightly overlooking 2 things, which are the genre conventions and the academic conventions, given the fact that we're not all teaching in the same context and we're teaching different types of writing. This is completely up to the teacher. And for the academic conventions, I think it's a little bit limited to a very high level student. So we'll be slightly overlooking these, but we'll focus on language development, systematic writing support, and planning, drafting, and editing. Right, I can see people still giving suggestions. This is awesome. Thank you. Okay, so what Skillful does is something that is really helpful and supportive for students in their journey to reaching the endpoint that we're aiming for, which is creating a comprehensive piece of writing. So there is language development through key language input at the beginning of the unit, right? Introducing new vocabulary, looking at the opening pages of the unit and talking about different themes, moving on to topic knowledge, which is again discussing the themes and discussing opinions around the themes, and then introducing a grammar point or a grammar item that will eventually help them in the writing process, and then offering a balanced argument, most of the time from 2 different sources, and this is to enhance their critical thinking, to see the topic from different angles and be able to judge which stance they are going to adopt. And then Skillful offers also writing skills activities, so focus on some writing skills, maybe summarizing, planning, paraphrasing, and all those things in relation to the level you're teaching, of course. And then finally offering a model to be followed. And I think this is the last supporting step before the students will be able to write or produce their own piece of writing. So this is a systematic approach that happens in every unit. And I think this echoes a lot what you said, Mohammed, about the continuation and the repetition of the writing itself, creating a routine. So this will be done seamlessly if you're using Skillful 2nd edition and writing. So you can look at this in a macro structure kind of way, like looking at the unit as a whole, maybe introducing the writing task at the beginning. This is completely up to the teacher. You can introduce the writing task at the beginning to your students and let them know that they're working towards this direction, in order for them to take into account whatever they are working on, like key vocabulary, grammar, topic knowledge, a balanced argument, the writing skills that they are practicing, and then the model. Or maybe work through all of these and then introduce them to the writing task later. This is completely up to you. But the idea is that Skillful offers a macro structure that will eventually enable the students to be able to write the task. And there is the microstructure within the writing lesson itself that starts with applying the topic knowledge that they have seen, maybe in the reading texts that they have read, and then planning those tasks, maybe with a peer or within a group or even individually. This is completely up to the teacher, but the activities in the book do allow, they have the margin for the teacher to change all of this from peer to group activity, or even depend on individual planning. And this you will find in the teacher guide that I'll talk about in a moment. And then there is the drafting part in the lesson. So students will be asked to draft their ideas that they have planned already. And then after writing the draft, they will be asked to read, edit, and then rewrite. So even the microstructure in Skillful is very helpful and very scaffolding for the student before producing a huge task that they know nothing about. So they will obtain the knowledge, they will have talked about the theme, they will have discussed that in class, they will have planned, drafted, and edited before producing the last thing. Thank you. Yes, pretty much. Having a direction from the beginning, it will linger longer. True that. When you talk about the topic a lot, Amania, right? I hope I got this right. It will definitely help them think about it a lot and be able to explore the whole topic from different angles. Well, one important thing also that is supported in Skillful, and I think we're all aware of how important it is in teaching, is understanding the levels of writing and understanding where our students are before asking them to write something. So writing can simply start from writing simple sentences or producing longer paragraphs or even writing a whole text. And the thing is, how do we evaluate our students' writing? Do we know their level? Do we know what we expect them to produce? What is it that we're asking of them? Let me ask you this question. How do you normally evaluate your students' writing? What things are you looking for in their writing in order for you to know where they stand? Can you take 30 seconds to share this with us? Quickly. I'm sure there are buzzwords that are going to come up. Definitely. Thank you so much. Pretty much in the direction of the presentation. We need to know the level first. Are there things that are common among all levels, though? Okay, perfect. We need to use a rubric. We need to use something to compare against. And of course, yeah, grammar, spelling, punctuation, like those things that language, we need to assess language and see if they followed instructions. Perfect. Right. So thank you very much for bringing the fact that it's very important to understand the level of our students first before judging the writing. And here's another kind of game/test for you. We do have on the screen 3 can-do statements from the CEFR levels. And I'd like you to take a look at them and tell me which matches A1, which matches A2, and which matches B1. Can you write them in order? So we have 3 can-do statements. We need to match them with A1, A2, B1 CFR levels. And let's see if we're very familiar with that. Any wild guess? The first bullet says, can produce straightforward connected texts on a range. Yeah, it is recorded, don't worry. Point to A1. Okay. Any other guesses? What about the first and the last one? Okay. Someone says that the first is A2. Okay, let's take a look and see. So the first one is actually B1. So again, this sometimes highlights the fact that we need to be acquainted with what we expect of our students before asking them too much or too little. So at B1 level, we expect our students to produce straightforward connected texts on a range of familiar subjects within their field of interest by linking a series of shorter discrete elements into a linear sequence. A1, of course, is the simplest and the easiest one to guess. They can produce simple, isolated phrases and sentences. And A2, our students are expected to produce a series of simple phrases and sentences linked with simple connectors like and, but, and because. So by understanding what the level of our students is, we'll be able to fine-tune our expectations and evaluation of the writing. This is something that is very evident in Skillful second edition because it is definitely aligned with the CFR levels, and you'll find the mapping in the teacher's guide too. So it will facilitate the whole thing, the whole process for the teachers to understand the can-do statements and what exactly they expect of their students. Right. So here's an idea of how Skillful second edition is aligned with the CFR levels. And as I mentioned, you'll find the mapping document, so you don't really have to worry about that. And then quickly, if we can think of what criteria should we consider when we're marking the writing. Someone said that there should be a rubric, but if we're going to give some criteria or put some criteria in the rubric, what things we'll be looking at when we're correcting a piece of writing? I just want simple words, like maybe grammar, vocabulary, because we've mentioned those. Any other ideas of or about the different criteria that we should be looking at when we're marking writing for our students? Okay, perfect. Which is, yeah, okay. Paragraphing, topic sentences. Yeah, that's a big thing. Grammar, vocabulary, ideas, spelling. Okay, topic, paragraph. Paraphrased. Okay, we're talking here about a much higher level probably. And conclusion. Excellent. Right. So I thought of bringing in an example of the criteria that one of the proficiency tests look at, which is Ielts. And I think it's pretty common in other proficiency tests. And this gives us an idea about how people, usually your examiners or language teachers, look at writing, like the main pillars of building a good piece of writing. And the four main criteria here are task response or task achievement, coherence and cohesion. I think this includes a lot of what you said about paragraphing, paraphrasing, linking, topic sentences, and then lexical resource, which is, in other words, vocabulary, its accuracy and its range, and grammatical range and accuracy, which includes, of course, grammar, sentence structure, sometimes spelling and mechanics. So the point of me bringing that today is an attempt to highlight that task response or task achievement is one of the major things, the most important things in evaluating writing, and one of the most overlooked things in our context generally, in MENA, in different schools, and sometimes at universities too. So we're going to take a closer look at task achievement and how important it is in evaluating writing and why it's important first. So, I mean, I don't mean to impose my opinion upon you, of course, but why do you think task achievement is such an important criterion when we're evaluating writing? Of course, we have a list here that says range of grammar, range of lexis or vocabulary, accuracy of grammar and vocabulary, coherence and cohesion, style and organization. But the question is, why is task achievement this important? In your opinion, of course. Cohesion is important. Yes, I agree, of course. We're not looking very closely at the band descriptors now. The whole idea behind the band descriptors was just an example of how important task achievement is as a criterion. But yeah, definitely, band 6 too. Again, back to the question, why do you think task achievement is important? Any ideas? Okay. Absolutely. If there is a task and the student is not responding to this task, then what's the point of writing in the first place? So the whole piece might be meaningless, even if it's well structured, even if it's coherent, but they're not responding to a task. So it's like writing is like any other question on the exam paper in class. If you're asking a student a question and they're responding to another question, then the whole point is missed. This is why task achievement is really important. Another reason why it's important is that it's not laborious. It doesn't take a lot of time to train your students to work on the task. It's not like when your students are working on acquiring new grammatical structure or learning new vocabulary. These things academically take longer time and they need a lot of practice. But once your students are geared towards identifying the task and responding to it, it gives so much weight to the writing and it facilitates the whole process of planning, editing, and rewriting. Right. So now we're going to look at an example or a suggestion of how to identify if the writing is on topic, if it achieves the task, and how can I explain this to my students. It's just a suggestion or an activity that gives you an idea of how to teach using Skillful second edition, but how to teach task achievement. Now we have 3 sentences on the screen, 3 tasks actually. I want you to read them in detail, and then I'll post another piece of writing, a paragraph, and I would like you to tell me which task is this paragraph responding to. So we have 3 tasks, and then we'll have a paragraph, and I would like you to tell me if this paragraph responds to task 1, 2, or 3. But first, take 30 seconds or maybe 1 minute to read the 3 tasks on screen. Right. Okay. So the first thing, if you're asked to do this, is to tell your students that they need to identify what exactly they're looking at in a task. How will they respond to a task before we see the paragraph? The main thing to teach your students here is identifying keywords. Because if you've noticed, the 3 tasks are very closely related. They're talking about social media, social networking, social and economic impacts of social media. So in order to be able to teach your students how to be on task, they need to identify keywords first. Excellent, thank you. Right, now that's the question. You have the paragraph. Take a couple of minutes to read and tell me which task does it respond to. Let's see who's the first who's going to get this really quickly and easily. Any fast readers? Okay, we have a winner. Excellent, right. Okay, so how did we manage to know that it is responding to question number 1 or task number 1? Okay, sorry for that. So again, the question is, how did we manage to know? What was the key clue that told you that is responding to question number 1? Excellent, Mohammed and Hassan. Everyone got it correctly. Okay. The last sentence in the paragraph, which is the topic sentence. Excellent. Okay. So this is one thing. Like when you identify the keywords, you'll be able to pinpoint what's the paragraph is about if you're reading, and vice versa. If you're writing, you'll be able to talk about the task in precision. So if you know the keywords. The question is, if the first task that we're talking about is the task in question, the task that we want our students to write about, how can we make sure they're on task? The second thing that we should be looking at is actually looking at the instruction words, evaluate. So what's the meaning of evaluate? How can I make sure that my students are actually evaluating the impact of social media on health and its users today? Well, they need to understand the differences between instruction words like evaluate, justify, outline. What is it to evaluate in your opinion? Can you give me a synonym? Okay, both sides and their standpoint. Judge or calculate. So give both sides and then see what outweighs the other. Okay, which one outweighs the other. Assess. Okay, what about justify? If we're asking our students to justify, what exactly do we expect them to do? Okay, agree with or support, maybe, give reasons. How about outline? Thank you, give reasons, yes. What about outline, the third one? Okay. Or maybe describe, right? Summarize or prove with evidence. Okay. Well, so again, back to the main point here. The whole idea is to train our students to understand the instruction words. So if we want them to evaluate something, this means we want them to look at it from different perspectives and maybe take a side after evaluating or listing those different stances. When we ask them to justify, we want them to give reasons, to expand more on why a certain thing is or why a certain opinion is that way. When we ask them to outline some impacts or some a phenomenon, for example, so we want them to describe, to give full description impartially without including their opinion in that. And when they train themselves on doing that from time to time with creating the writing routine as you suggested, this is going to be a piece of cake for them. And then this, again, bearing in mind that they have underlined the keywords, they are on task, they know what exactly they are writing about. The planning part should be now the easiest part of the writing. So instead of giving them the task and telling them just write about whatever or evaluate whatever, teach them to dissect the task in order to be able to move through the whole process seamlessly. Okay, so I think, yeah, that was the part that I was asking about. How did we know? The physical and mental well-being. So a synonym of what health is guided us on the idea of being on task. This could be one thing, but it doesn't have to be always this direct. It depends on the level of the writing. Okay. So here, as we mentioned, and as you actually mentioned, that evaluate means to write about the positive effects on physical and mental health of social media, of course, and the negative effects, and then do the positive effects outweigh the negative effects. This is what it means to evaluate. Once they've done that one time or two times or three times, I think later on an essay of evaluation will be a lot easier, and it will help them stay on task all the time. And when they are on task, when they're planning without much stress, of finding ideas or developing their ideas, their focus will eventually or automatically shift towards writing in better language and varied structures, and everything in the writing will be automatically enhanced. Okay, so to sum up how to teach or focus on task achievement while teaching, the first thing is to identify the keywords, which will help understand the main subject, write this subject, and then identify restricting words, which limit what you should write about. So it's not social media in general, but it's the impact of social media on mental and physical health, and then identify the meaning of the instruction. What am I asked to do here? Am I asked to outline the impact or evaluate the impact? Those three steps will eventually make your students' writing a lot easier and will help them to stay on task. Okay, so I think we're coming to a wrap up here. Skillful second edition, as we mentioned, helps students write a lot easier, especially when it comes to academic writing, which is not an easy task most of the time for students, and specifically your students who are still probably high schoolers. So it offers a lot of support, and mainly in 5 different areas. The first one is language development that is found throughout the units, systematic writing support that starts from the macro structure of the unit and the micro structure of the lesson, the genre conventions, and of course you'll find this across the levels, starting from foundation, writing simple sentences, until level 4, which allows the students to write complete writing tasks. The planning, drafting, and editing activities that scaffold students a lot in writing and enables them to share this with their peers and with their teachers. And the academic conventions, and I think this is very related to the highest level of Skillful, and the fact that the Skillful series is mapped against the CFR level. It will enable your students to write academically and confidently in academic English in every context, not only at school or only in the classroom that you're teaching. So you're actually helping them use the language outside the classroom too. Right, that's kind of a happy ending of the presentation, where you will get to take a look at the teacher's guide and how supportive it is of what we've talked about. So you don't really have to come up with everything from scratch. You will find all the guidance you need in the teacher's guide. So I got you bits and pieces of what the teacher's guide says when it comes to writing or building a writing lesson plan. Here's, if you can see on the screen, on the left-hand side, there is the outline or the macro structure of the unit, starting with reading 1, using the topic sentence to understand the main ideas, and reading 2, then moving to the study skill that we talked about, vocabulary, grammar, and then the writing. And then you will find more elaboration on the critical thinking part, how you can support critical thinking ideas, how can students use the study skills. For example, here we're talking about reflective learning journals. So it's a study skill that they can use to reflect on their learning journey, whether inside the classroom or in other contexts. Also, you will find some exam skills tips that will help your students a lot. Here, for example, it is giving you an example of part 3 of the Ielts speaking test and how they will be able to use the skills explored in the unit when it comes to preparing for an exam. And this is why I mentioned earlier in the presentation that Skillful second edition caters majorly for all types of English and of course academic English. On top of that, there is a writing model, and there's everything that is laid out in the teacher's guide that tells you how to warm your students up for this model and how to use it and how to allow them to work within its frame. There is a lot of scaffolding and support when it comes to using the academic words with their phonemic script and the correct answers and how they should be used in certain activities. And then the whole plan of the writing is laid out again in the teacher's guide, starting from the brainstorming process, the planning, the writing, the sharing, the rewriting, and editing. And also, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, everything comes like within a click of a button now that we're staying at home and we do have to do a lot of things behind the screen. So the course could be completely digital and it could be combined. I skipped that. Okay, so what you will need to do as a teacher, before we move on to the screenshots to just familiarize you with the whole thing, is that you will open the front cover of the book and you will find a code within the front cover. This code is the code that you'll be using in accessing all the materials, be it the teacher's materials or the student's materials. So here's what you're going to do. I think it's self-explanatory. You'll find it really easy, but again, I made sure to include some screenshots to familiarize you with how it looks like. You will type in the website Macmillan English Everywhere. You will find this screen. You'll create an account first. You will find this screen, and then you will click the Activate Code button, and then you will bring the code from the internal part of the front cover. As I told you, you will type it in here. You will press Activate Code. This will automatically take you to a message that tells you that you've successfully included the book and added it to your bookshelf. If you click the blue button of Go to My Bookshelf, you will find the level that you've activated. Here in that case, it's Skillful 2nd edition, probably level 1, if I remember well. That was my trial. And then when you press on that level, you will find the different digital students book materials, the online workbook, the teacher's presentation kit, which you can use in class on a smart board, the teacher's resources center, where you'll find a lot of printable worksheets, extra activities, and everything that you would need, and the test generator, from which you can, of course, generate tests, add, assimilate, have your own Frankenstein test and save it. There's a lot of flexibility in there. You'll enjoy it a lot. Also, here is a sneak peek on writing task model answers. So you will find for each unit the writing task model answers. So you can use it to give the students the models to see if they are following it, to use it in different activities if you'd wish to do that. And there's also a sneak peek on how a new window opens when you click on online workbook. So it takes you just to a different window or a different tab, but you will still open it from where you're logged in. I don't have classes here apparently because this is a demo, but you will find the classes that you've registered here, and you can access everything your students do in their workbooks. And I'm going to leave this for a moment on the screen if you wish to see more resources that are related to Skillful 2nd edition. Thank you very much for your time. I can't believe I made it on time. I'm just 2 minutes away from the closing time of the meeting. Thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. And please, if you have any quick questions or inquiries, let me know before we conclude the event. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure having you. Same here. Thank you so much. Thank you. And here's my email, just in case you thought about a question later on, you want to inquire about something. I'll be happy to take your questions, of course, and I'm glad that my colleague Muhammad is here. I know he's covering the area and he's much more knowledgeable about everything, but I'm here to help if you want anything. Yes, thank you, Nathan. And Muhammad, of course. Thank you very much all for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I really enjoyed being with you today. Yes, don't forget we have the PD Academy. Yes, please do visit the PD Academy website. It's very useful and you'll find a lot of webinars there. Yeah. All right. No, your students can have their books online, of course. They can activate the code as the demo shows here for the teachers. The students too can activate their codes and have theirs to access their books online, definitely. Yes. Interactive digital book. All right. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you later in other events. Don't forget to visit the MENA PD Academy website and follow up on all of our events. Pleasure to have you, and goodbye.